Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. I am your host, Jimmy Smith. Delighted that you have stopped by on this wine educational channel, really designed to help those of you who just want to know all you can about the world of wine, but specifically with those of you in mind that are studying wine, such as the WSET. And this is a video with no exception to that. This is the South African series. We are looking at series 5 of the South African series for the WSET Diploma. So here you can see that we are looking at the wine regions, the coastal region and Olifants area. And we are now on part 3 of the multi-part series of South Africa. So we're looking here at the famous, very important Stellenbosch. Now, this part, along with the previous 2 parts, are available as free content. Parts 4 through to 8 will only be available on my e-learning portal. That's over at www.winewithjimmy.com. Now, I'd like to hear from you if you've been to Stellenbosch. Maybe you've been to the Fat Butcher restaurant in Stellenbosch, or you've just been drinking lots of lovely Stellenbosch Bordeaux blends or Pinotage or Chenin Blanc. Please do get in touch and pop a comment in the comments section. If you do have any questions, please put them there as well, and make sure you click like and subscribe whilst you are there. You can also get in touch with the social media you see at the bottom of every slide. Let's rock and roll, talking about the world of Stellenbosch. First of all, about where we find it. Now, Stellenbosch is a district which is situated due east of Cape Town. So you'll actually see on this map, all of this sort of built up area, you see a lot of grid format of roads, is in fact the eastern side of Cape Town. And as you drive the N2 out of Cape Town, you then head up and you come north here towards Stellenbosch, which is a town, a city. And the town of Stellenbosch has many sort of areas around it. So Stellenbosch is our district, but we have many wards within Stellenbosch, which are actually all of these different colours here. So you see red, green, yellow, orange, blue, and even sort of a pinky colour down here as well. So most of these are wards that we find within Stellenbosch. Now, Stellenbosch is a very important. Now, Cape Town is the capital city of the Western Cape. Stellenbosch is the kind of spiritual hub, the business hub, certainly for South African wine. Very important for that, of course. And off the back of that, a really important institution is what you see here. In 1918, a university was founded, and to this day, the University of Stellenbosch remains an internationally recognized education center and one of the leading universities on the African continent. It is one of 2 learning centers in South Africa that trains fledgling winemakers, the other being the Elsenburg Educational College outside Stellenbosch. So mightily important area. And of course, most of the winemakers that you meet today from the Western Cape often will have experience through Stellenbosch University. A little bit more history around this area as well. So the recorded history of Stellenbosch dates back to 1679, when the name was given to a small island on the Eerste River, the first river, by Simon van der Stel. He was the then governor of the Cape at the time. After Constantia, it is the oldest of South Africa's wine regions and the one that did most to establish the country's reputation for high quality wines, especially based on Cabernet Sauvignon. It certainly has a lot of importance around the Bordeaux blends, for example. Leading up to today, historical estates are still found here, the likes of Cannon Cop, for example, Kleine Zalze. with revitalized younger winemakers in this area. So those sit alongside each other, tradition and modernity, plus a range of styles of businesses is here. So you'll find along many of the old routes, you'll find like Meerlust and Spear Wine Farm, a lot of those old wine farms, but some modern producers here as well. You'll also find Distel, South Africa's largest wine and spirits producer, alongside new estates backed by investments from home and abroad, and growers who sell their fruit to cooperatives, merchants, and wineries. So it's quite a dynamic part of South Africa. Just a little bit more here as well around the river that Stellenbosch sits on. The river, the Erst River, still today ripples through Stellenbosch, and was so called, the etymology of being the first river, when Dutch settlers came upon this area after leaving their Cape Town base. After its discovery, Stellenbosch was very quickly identified as an area to settle, with great potential for agriculture. The surrounding areas proved rich in soil and the correct climate for producing vegetables to sustain the ships passing through the Cape of Good Hope en route for other Dutch colonies in the east. Of course, very important for the Dutch East India Company. Add to this the thirst of the Dutch and other settlers. They needed a drink, and they really required some wine. So, of course, this necessitated the production of wine. Stellenbosch soon saw its hills and its valleys planted with vines alongside their other agricultural crops. And suddenly you have this bustling wine industry happening in Stellenbosch. So what about the conditions here? Well, Stellenbosch we would consider, for the most part, as being a warm Mediterranean climate. Now, of course, there's always little pockets of microclimates within each area. And when you get to places like Simmonsburg, Stellenbosch, and maybe even Banhoek as well, you'll find that you have slightly more continental conditions in play within those areas. But generally warm Mediterranean, with summers being fairly hot and dry and nice long days behind them as well. The southeasterly that comes through here is very classic. That often blows in summer, bringing cooler air from the nearby coastal zone. Daytime temperatures here range normally from 24 degrees to 35 degrees Celsius. And of course, it has typically the occasional scorching weather as well, where it could be high 30s and even low 40s during the summer months. Nighttime temperatures range from the mid-teens to the high 20s, with the occasional hot and balmy sort of 30 degrees Celsius, certainly due to its kind of Mediterranean influence here. The winters are typically wet, windy and cold, and rains are brought with northwesterly winds. Daytime temperatures during the winter months are 10 to 20 degrees Celsius, and some chilly days with temperatures below 10 degrees C can be expected in the midwinter. Spring and fall are quite temperate times. There are some occasional rainfalls during this, of course, and the rainfall varies in total annually from around 600 to 900. Of course, that depends on the valley, like Banhoek Valley, or the Simmonsburg Stellenbosch Mountain, or the Botteleri Hills. It all depends where you are, of course, specifically. So coming back to this map, just to talk about the mountain effect of Stellenbosch, and please get this into your mind, no matter where you are in South Africa, there's going to be some sort of mountain influence from some of the extensive or slightly smaller mountain ranges that one finds across the whole area. Now, the major contributors to quality are those cooler mountain slopes located on the Simmonsburg, the Botteleri Hills, the Stellenbosch, and the Helderberg Mountains. And that's what we're identifying here. Remember, we talked about driving down this N2, turning left and going up towards Stellenbosch town. Immediately to the north of this area, we find quite an important area called the Bottolari Hills. And then if you keep going up, you'll eventually hit the Simmonsberg-Stellenbosch area, which is where we find this mountain, the Simmonsberg Mountain, which is really the separating geographical feature from Paarl, which sits to the northeast of this area. And then here you'll see this big expanse is that, in fact, the Overberg with these little parts that jut out. I say little, they are pretty significant, and that's the Stellenbosch and Helderberg Mountains. So really, I mean, it's not hemmed in by mountains, but you have hills to the northern section. To the northeast, you have the Simmonsberg, and then you have quite an extensive mountain network sitting towards the east and the southeast. So it really is this valley that sits in that middle area. Snowfall is rare, but you will find that mountains are snow-capped. You'll find snow-capped peaks certainly around the Helderberg, Stellenbosch, and go to the Overberg areas, certainly in winter, of course, in these areas. Various soil types then as well. Now, there is the range of sites available here from the valley floor towards the Erst River, for example, and also close to False Bay, which tend to be more sandy and alluvial. And then as you head towards most of the mountains, we find a lot of granitic and shale soils with a little bit of Table Mountain sandstone in certain places as well. Now, this diversity means you have a real plethora of geology to play with. You've got wonderful amounts of exposures, aspects, altitudes, cooling breezes of the mountains, and then the geology, which means, of course, a real range of varieties can be found within the Stellenbosch area. There's also a huge amount of creativity and innovation in Stellenbosch due to the fact that it's the centerpiece spiritually and educationally for wine. So you're going to find a lot of really great traditionalists which are flying the flag for things like pinotage and old vines, some dry farming going on, but also those more modern producers who are trying fun and innovative processes to really get the best out of their wines, be it something like Sanso, maybe from Alex Milner, for example, at Knapp Valley, or all the way towards, you know, things that could be produced by Kleine Zalzi, Radford Dale, you know, and looking at more sort of traditional styles and fun expressions for things like Gamay. That are being found in these areas. So really fun. I mean, I could talk about that for a long time, but this, of course, is educational for WSET, so I'm not going to go off too much of a tangent. There certainly are a lot of efforts around picking times, yield as well, in terms of restricting yields, that can actually really play an important role in the end style and the body of the wines. For example, some growers are reducing the yield and picking early to have fruit that is fresher, so the acidity is having a marked play in that wine, but with slightly lower alcohols, but still fully ripe seeds and skins, so some wines with good structure. So therefore, producing wines which can actually be considered quite European when you look at things like Cabernet-based blends. Stellenbosch's reputation as one of South Africa's leading winemaking regions is based on very good to outstanding quality wines, premium priced Cabernet Sauvignon, and typically the blends, plus Shiraz, plus Chenin Blanc. But remember, everything can be found here. Look out for Brive Rats, makes brilliant wines at Rats Family Wines. There's some good stuff being produced at Rusten Vrede. There, of course, is the likes of Cannoncop, like I've mentioned, Kleine Zalzi, Meerlust, and the list goes on from very decent producers. Now, we're going to look at a separate subsection of Stellenbosch, of course, which we call a ward. And you'll see this here. So this is a different type of map of Stellenbosch. Here is the Erst River that you see coming through the middle of Stellenbosch. You have the Bottolari Hills, Devon Valley just here, Stellenbosch, the town itself just here. Immediately to the north of Stellenbosch and heading into the Simmonsberg Mountain is an area called the Simmonsberg Stellenbosch. This ward, therefore, is on the lower slopes of the southwest side of the Simmonsberg. It's slightly warmer than the sites closer to False Bay. and on the slopes of the Stellenbosch mountain and the Helderberg zone. So it's a bit of a warmer little subzone. But its vineyards are still quite open to the sea breezes, the southeasterly, which is depicted by the arrow on this map. And it has a higher diurnal range than the flatter sites as well. So therefore, you're going to be able to get really decent acidities from the Simmonsberg Stellenbosch. Quite a lot of freshness is going to be found there as well, whilst you're going to get great structure at the same time in this area. It's especially recognized for Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Sauvignon based blends, and also Pinotage. And Pinotage is well known for losing its acidity on flatter sites and being picked a little bit too late. So it's going to retain its freshness in the Simmonsberg Stellenbosch area. Okay, so that's the very famous part north of Stellenbosch. Famous producers to talk about here. Rustenburg is one of those. Cannoncop in this picture you'll see quite famously as well. A really a famous estate, initially established by Paul Sauer. The top range is today named after Paul Sauer, but real custodians of Pinotage. About half of their vineyard land is Pinotage, and then a lot of the rest is Cabernet and Cabernet related varietals. So really quite stalwarts and custodians in the reds of Simmonsberg Stellenbosch. Brilliant, well-aging, capable Bordeaux blends and Pinotage, and arguably some of the most famous traditional style of Pinotage that one can find from the whole of South Africa. And there's lots of wonderful modern expressions being made, of course, today as well. Stellenbosch, then looking at as a district, now the warm climate allows the traditional black grape varieties of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot and Pinotage to ripen well. Cabernet and Merlot here looking at about a third of the plantation. Sauvignon Blanc is about 13%. Chenin Blanc comes in at about 10%, and Chardonnay is a little bit here. But you'll also find Syrah in the mix as well. Typically, the wines are very good to outstanding, with premium price Cabernet Sauvignon being found certainly with the related blends as well. So yes, that's your kind of main focus. I would say really Bordeaux blends are probably the most traditional, what one finds in Stellenbosch, but you do find, of course, everything. And that's why the other figure here at a third is quite substantial, because there's a bit of everything found in this area. Alrighty, let's look at one of these wonderful Google Earth 3D videos to significantly put this into your mind on how beautiful the Stellenbosch area is. So let's have a look, and we'll look at the overview area to begin with. Of course, there is South Africa outlined in white. Now we're going to head to the Western Cape, which is where 99.9% of our grapes come from in South Africa. We will head to Cape Town, of course, an important location, but then we'll see the expanse of Cape Town there, and we're only just outside of Cape Town for Stellenbosch. On the Erst River, remember, very famous, an agricultural area, and of course it holds Stellenbosch University, where you can study enology and grape growing, one of only two places. Very important. That's what attracts so much innovation and creativity here. So many skilled winemakers have come through Stellenbosch, and it really is quite nice gastronomically as well. Let's get an idea of the topography of this landscape. So we've got some good mountain ranges here, such as the Stellenbosch Mountain. And we've also got the likes of the Helderberg Mountain as well. And these mountain ranges are significant. They provide cooling winds to these areas. They provide a bit of aspect and also some rain shadows, but they also help trap a bit of heat here. Here's the southern section towards the Helderberg Mountain area. So the Stellenbosch, the Helderberg. Now in the north of Stellenbosch town, are some hills called the Bottelary Hills. So not as significant in terms of their size, but some great wines being produced there as well. And then in the far northeasterly section, we have the Simmonsberg. And we have a ward here called Simmonsberg Stellenbosch. As you can see, it goes up to the mountain, famous for the likes of Cannoncop, who make very high quality Pinotage and Cabernet Sauvignon, very famous in this area. So all of this creates a real diversity of a climate, a mosaic of terroirs, for example, and then just wonderful aspects and all of that. So that's the Banhoek down there at the bottom, another ward, by the way, in that gap, with some wonderful wines being produced there too. Excellent stuff. I hope you've enjoyed that video, really putting to life there Stellenbosch. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the rather long Stellenbosch video, which is only fitting for such an important area. Please do join me for part 4, when we go across the Simmonsberg mountain and we go to Paarl and the Franschhoek Valley. Wonderful area to look at, but that part, along with anything that comes after, so that's all the way up to part 8, is available only on my e-learning portal. That's over at www.winewithjimmy.com. Lots of exclusive video content, flashcards, written questions, maps, loads of things to help you with your educational studies, to give you the confidence to understand these topics and, of course, really be successful at your examinations. If you do have any comments, any questions, any concerns, get in touch. You could do so by commenting on this video. I'd love to hear about your experiences in places like Stellenbosch. If you've been to any wine farms out here, any great restaurants that you may have been to, please do pop them in the section below. I know a fair bit about wine, but I'm always learning and always want to hear about your favorite things as well. And if you want to get in touch by social media, please do. But the last thing really to mention is, if you do find yourself in Old Blighty, that's the United Kingdom, then come and see me for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Thank you.